At the last OGP summit in London, while Prime Minister Cameron was talking, there was a question from the audience, and one of the gentlemen started the question with the following. He said, Prime Minister Cameron, we know that transparency is a vaccine for corruption. That has always stuck in my head, and ever since then I've used it a few times. Transparency is a vaccine for corruption. So open data is a vaccine for corruption in many countries around the world. Opening the data will open the eyes to their citizens of where the money being spent, how are the institutions functioning, are they efficient, and how they can be improved. Macedonia has been one of the early countries that signed the Open Government Partnership, and since then we've created a couple action plan, and Andrew has been a big supporter through the World Bank in Macedonia, and so far we have opened around 128 data sets. They're always in machine readable format, and we have invited the private sector to create applications, because the power of the data set is not only if you create an application for that particular data set, but when you mix match more data sets that no other institution in the country has provided that kind of information previously. That is where the big data comes to a really useful term for the society. This is where the economy is created, new jobs, new innovations, and hopefully a growth in GDP. So since then, we have seen some good examples. We have some mobile applications created, but we are still continuing to open up more and more data sets. What is important, what I'm trying to get, if that data set is not open on time and the private sector has invested resources, then his business models goes down the hill. So we have to make sure that governments that sign up institutions to open data, they better be on time, on the date where is assigned or the date where it was promised to the private sector. That is why Macedonia created a special legislation that if institutions do not open the data on time as promised, then there will be penalties on the institutions, even penalties on the minister who is in charge of that institutions. And that has put more pressure, a burden on the institutions that this is a serious step that the Republic of Macedonia is trying to take. We would like to open the data to show that we're a transparent government. We believe that opening the data, the private sector can have a complete new sector that can be grown, and with that, new jobs, new innovations will be created. And we're looking forward to the day where we can be a showcase with some examples about the successful stories of opening data create application. Now, based on the success rate, I would like to turn to Andrew to share with us some of the success stories that UK has plenty of these kind of success stories. And we heard earlier from Mr. Mittal that in the European Union in 2013, I believe, the reusable of this open data generated an economy of close to 78 billion US dollars. Data that was already existent, they were just being reused, create applications, 78 billion US dollars. So the potential is unlimited. So Andrew, please.
Okay, some quick stories. One of the things about data is that data doesn't know what it's for. So one of the things we found in the UK was we release very detailed data every month of which every ministry and every agency, every payment they have made over a certain minimum threshold, what it was for, who it was to. And this was a transparency measure. This was purely seen as transparency. And after a few months, we found that a company called Spikes Cavell had come in and made a business out of this data. And they'd realized that within this hundreds of thousands of rows of data generated every month, there was actually the data on which ministry was buying which goods at what price from which supplier. And it was quite hidden because all the codings were different, and they put some smarts into organizing the data, and then they started to sell it as business intelligence. So this was data released for transparency, and someone's made a business out of getting value out of that data. So that's one success. Another success, there's an application called, for reasons I won't try and translate, an asbarometer. Someone had the idea, an application developer called Jeff Gilfeld, who's a professional mobile application developer, that he could take the detailed crime data in the UK, where every crime in a public place or every crime against property is shown on a website and it's downloadable data at the level of individual crimes. And then he could use the GPS on the smartphone. And so if you're in an area of high street crime, your phone flashes red saying it's time to put your phone in your pocket. Because if you've got an expensive phone in a place of high street crime. And this was the most popular application on the Apple App Store in the UK for 6 weeks running.
And is it free?
It was free, but he's a professional web application developer. So guess what application is top of his CV? Okay, third example. In the UK, every transaction in property, sale of property, is the data on that is published, the address and the date and the purchase amount. A firm called Zoopla take that data. There's a similar firm called Zillow in the United States, and they have a model which, on the basis of what the property sold for in the past and what nearby properties have sold for recently, you can get the value of a house. So people look on the value of houses, and then that's used for realtors, estate agents, insurance companies, finance companies to advertise there. They've just gone to IPO for 1.6 billion US dollars on the London stock market. But my big example for here is transport data in the UK. And the thing about transport data is lots and lots of people use transport. They use it on a daily basis, both public transport and driving. And by with better information, they can take decisions about their journey which are valuable to them. Basically, they save themselves time. And it seemed hard to release transport data in the UK because most of the interesting data was actually held by transport operating companies, not by the government. We could have done it by regulation, but for legal reasons, without having to pay a lot of compensation, it would have taken 30 years to implement it. So instead, about 4 years ago, we just started to work with the transport companies, persuade their leadership that there was value to them in releasing their data. And now for ground transportation in the UK, it's largely done. Bus routes, train routes, metro routes, timetables for all those, fares for all those, and real-time running for all those. And in London, there are 25 real-time data feeds about transport facilities in London. Roads, buses, metros, trains, cycle hire. I mean, there's data feeds on how many cycles are available at cycle hire points and the like. There are 500 applications, third-party applications that have been now developed using these data feeds. There are about 5,000 people employed in this application ecosystem. They're not all developers, they're support people, they're salespeople, marketing and all that. Over 50% of the population of London have at least one of these applications on their mobile phone. The Transport Authority for London have stopped writing their own applications. They said, we don't want to waste money trying to compete with all these great applications.
Sure.
It's better for us just to supply the data. And last summer, this open data of transport in London was evaluated economically on the basis of any other transport project, on the basis of what was the economic value of the time saved to travellers. And it came out that by then, it had reached return on investment of 58 to 1.
58 to 1.
58 to 1. Now, to put this in context,
in what period of time?
that was over 3 years, but it's getting better all the time because most of the investment's been made, month by month, people are still getting benefits. The threshold for a transport investment in the UK is a lifetime return on investment of 1.4 to 1. So 58 to 1 turns out to be the most successful public investment in transport ever made in London by just opening the data on the transport was there. It's got a big kick to the economic value to London.
Impressive.
For example.
Thank you. Well, now we can only see the potential in Guadalajara. 6 million people. If 50% of the people would use one of these kind of applications that will be created by opening the data of the government, I think the potential is enormous. But let's get back to Enrique. Enrique, if you're still on Skype, can you share with us some of the best cases of some of the projects that you have in the pipeline of the President's office?
Absolutely. I think that taking from where Andrew left, for us, it's priority to know the economic value of data in Mexico. We are actually just releasing today a comprehensive study about the 100 companies and using open data from the government to create economic and social value. We are collaborating with the GovLab of the University of New York to create this list from now on to February 2015 to start precisely knowing these values, start knowing and understanding how the data from the government is being used by society. And I think this is a priority for every single open data policy around the world. But we are also doing another things that are aimed at creating a comprehensive regulatory framework for open data as you did in Macedonia. In a couple of weeks, we are going to release an executive order that will make or mandate to make all public information open data. We'll release it in open data readable formats with the adequate legal licenses for its use, reuse, and redistribution. And we think that this is going to gradually build up an open data infrastructure in Mexico so that people can use our data for greater value. We are also very interested in promoting projects in government. Just some minutes ago, Bhanu was saying that the Millennium Development Goals are not going to be probably met because of the inconsistencies with data. In Mexico, we are aware of this and we are using open data as seen with this problem. We are using open data from the Ministry of Health, for example, to start understanding how maternal mortality in Mexico is behaving and how we can use open data to reduce maternal mortality here in our country. We are using also open data to reduce the affectations of natural disasters in Mexico. We are using data from the last couple of important natural disasters we had last year. Here it's Ingrid and Manuel in Guerrero that affected a big part of our country and affected a lot of people to understand how we can best prevent these issues. We are using open data to develop, for example, a civil safety app that will provide warnings for hydrometeorological events, tsunamis, volcanic activities from our volcanoes that are here just a couple of kilometers from the capital city. We are using open data to mitigate problems through data philanthropy, to use databases such as mobile network usage and climate or precipitation information for significant things related to location of shelters, for example, for increased response to civil protection, to alert and response to civilian mobility in better ways that can manage in a better way these kind of emergencies. And lastly, we're also using open data for recovery, which is an important part of the whole natural disasters pipeline. We are using this open data as an online web platform, create an online web platform where it is possible to train every single peso assigned for reconstruction. And we're doing this from the moment of, for example, when a bridge collapses until the time that the
cars can drive again through that same bridge. And this is very important for the sake of transparency, as you were saying, Ivo, but also for the sake of government efficiency, to know that we are investing reconstruction funds in the public works that need to be rebuilt, not in places that will probably be affected again. We have a fund for natural disasters called Fund Mexico, in which we are obtaining information with photographic support of the damage, the resources used, and the location where these resources are being used. And using this information, we can deliver better monitoring tools so that citizens can see how our government, how the Mexican government is being accountable in these kind of disasters. We are actually today also releasing this very tool of monitoring funding in our online platform, datos.go.mx, which will be probably up by the middle of the day. And finally, I would say that one of the main and most important projects is the platform itself. In the couple of last months, we created a Mexican-led data squad, which went inside 10 priority government agencies to capacitate them in what data is, to capacitate them and train them in what our open data policy will mandate, and to release their priority data. Through this, we achieve more than 150 priority high-value data sets from the government, which are coming not only with these 10 agencies in which we make the pilot project, but which there are coming from 17 agencies. We had 17 agencies that hopped in and wanted to be at the lead edge and the cutting edge of open data in Mexico, and you will be able to find these data sets also today. And I think that following the example of the UK, following the example that Macedonia has set to the world, countries like Mexico, offices like the coordination of the National Digital Strategy, you can start doing open data not from the start, but start as
Did we lose you?
and one of the leaders in the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Enrique. This is really amazing what Mexico has been doing on this topic. And I understand that you have to leave us by 10:20. Do you have any last words that you would like to say?
I would just like to say thank you very much for supporting the view of the Mexican government and what the Mexican government is in terms of open government and open data. To say that open data is a priority for the Mexican government, and the example of that is that we are supporting this from the very office of the president. We are using open data to increase transparency, to increase accountability, but we are focused on using open data to create economic and social well-being and development. And that we are doing this not only from the government, but that we are going to all the sectors of society and receiving all the comments and all the help from the civil society that we can get. I think that today our role as public servants and our role as government is to integrate data as part of the very own.
I think we lost you.
Should do this together. So,
Okay.
so thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and we wish you all the best in this very, very good agenda that you have for the citizens of Mexico. Now, I would like to continue with the panelists. We share some best examples. I'd like to share one that it was in the United States. I wouldn't mention the name. Maybe some of you have mentioned, maybe have used that application, but it started with inspection for cleanliness of the restaurants. Government entity who goes and inspects how clean is the kitchen, how clean is the restaurant, the facility, and they rank them. And I think many countries have this. And by opening that data, a group of people, very innovative, decided to create an application that you can download from your iOS, Android, and Windows platform smartphones, where you can see if you're in a vicinity of area, tourist or a local, and you like to have a dinner. You can open this application and you can see the rank of how clean is the kitchen, how clean is the restaurant, how many complaints they have had from the citizens, and how often does the inspection from the state or the city goes and visit this restaurant. Now at the beginning, of course, this was free, but after all, it was so much downloaded as application, it was so visible that actual restaurant of the owners were calling the hotline of the inspection and begging them to come and make an inspection to their restaurant, because that was a deciding factor for tourists to enter their restaurant or not enter the restaurant. If they were not ranked, people will just pass the restaurant and go to a neighbor across the street who was ranked. So this is a business model that is proven to provide millions for the economy, create new jobs and so forth, and then third parties were connected to it and fourth parties were connected to it.
I'd just add to that in San Francisco, when they released the data on restaurant inspections, they did a follow-up study, and they found that admissions to emergency rooms for food poisoning had dropped by 19% as well. So it's both business benefit and benefit to public health.
So that is cross-matching the open data.
Absolutely.
That is where they see the value. Bhanu, UNESCO.
Yes.
Can you share some with us, some studies, please?
I will just, share some of the findings that we have from our study. Recently, governments have started to open up the education-related data. What they are doing is, okay, how many children are served by a particular school in a given area. This has in fact created a very good basis for private school operator to come and maybe create a business, but at the same time philanthropic organization to come and create some kind of school for the poor or those who are unserved. So this is one. Right now, I think I just read yesterday, Ebola's outbreak is being better managed and better catered for, given the fact that the governments are sharing their data much more efficiently than they had earlier did when AIDS outbreak or like SARS outbreak essentially occurred. So the quality of education also has a definite impact, and as well as healthcare. Recently we found a study in Indonesia where the clinic operator, health clinic operator, what they are doing is they are trying to identify the areas where there are some medical issues. So they're opening up small medical installation so that where people can come and get a proper health care. This is another. The other thing, what big data essentially has done, and I think I can take an example of UK. Fix My Street is something that comes to my mind. That it's not that big data is helping people, but at the same time it is also helping the government.
Sure.
Government are being told that which particular stretch of the street is completely worn out, where are potholes and so forth. People are in fact like pinpointing that. Recently what we did was we decided to team up with Open Street Maps and identified, okay, where are the schools so what students could do is they could in fact tweet about their school, how many students are there and so forth. Now Red Cross has picked up that data and that will be part of their disaster risk reduction strategy, which they will implement sometime. And now this is included in the report that just came out. So what will happen is if there will be an unfortunate event of earthquake or flood or so forth, the relief workers can in fact direct their attention toward these areas where the schools are located or some other hospitals and point of interest for people are located. The other thing is, I think this is the last point. Big data essentially, or this government data has created a very good instrument for something that we have been talking for a long time. That any development plan should be based on subsidiarity principle. Right now, because of big data and opening data, people, even an individual, is contributing and being part of the overall planning processes of a country.
Thank you. Well, I'd like to open up the floor for questions before we wrap up. We have seen that open data can benefit healthcare, education, transportation, economy, create new jobs. The limit, there is no limit, it's limitless, the potential of the open data. And in the previous panel discussion, we talked about broadband. How do you stimulate broadband if you don't have the content? I'm so happy that UNESCO is involved in open data now, because they're all about content in education and culture and preserving the culture. So opening the data in reality could be a stimulus package as well for rural areas or the underserved to have broadband connectivity, because there is already content that can be very well accepted and absorbed by those new users. So if you have microphones, let's hear a few questions, if we have any questions from the audience. I see people stretching in the back, but I'm not sure if they're raising hand. Oh, right there. And then we'll go here. If you can tell us your name, please.
Hi.
Yeah.
How do you deal with the security of the open data?
Security of the data.
Security.
Would you like to start?
I think there are a number of issues about that you have to look before you open a government data set. One is national security. The other is things like privacy. So in the UK, we've got a process for each of those. And it's quite clear that we won't release personal data and we won't prejudice national security. But what we found is that that often isn't just a simple, we won't withhold the data, that we can just withhold the data set. It's actually thinking, what do we need to do to a data set so we can make it useful and we can release it while protecting privacy and protecting security. So for instance, we published 24 million records of public expenditure data from the Ministry of Finance, but we cut out the records about spending by the intelligence agencies. And we're quite open. We're not going to prejudice national security by publishing the details of the intelligence and security budgets. We publish details of every medical prescription written in the National Health Service. But of course, we take out not only the name and address of the patient, but we actually take out a number of other potentially identifying details that could be used to re-identify
Thank you.
the patient.
Thank you. Let's go with the second question, please.
Hi, thank you. How do you think open data can help fight corruption in the countries?
You want to take on this, Bhanu? Bhanu?
I think one of the basic pretexts of the government opening up their data is to curb corruption. And something if I can borrow from Mr. Minister's statement, what was it? Maybe you can. There was opening up is reducing corruption.
Yeah, vaccine for corruption.
So in fact, up until now, there are no empirical studies undertaken. But I think like open data already has contributed toward making government more responsive toward the citizen, and at the same time, citizen much more responsive toward their government. So this is happening. There are several proxy indicators to prove that, but I think if you'll say that to what extent percentage-wise, I think we will not be in a position to give you that statistics at this stage.
I can share one example briefly. E-procurement. We have created a system about 5 years ago where all the procurement of the government institutions must be made electronically. And we are reached to a point where 100% of the procurement has to be done with what's called reverse auctioning. So companies that meet the criteria, they don't know each other anywhere from the world, they have a digital signature, they are outbidding each other, whoever has the lowest bid. And this is transparent that anybody in the Macedonia, anybody in the world can see how much the government has spent for a particular item. So this is one example of how they can help. Let's go into as the last question, the third row. Gentlemen, third row, please.
Hello. What could be some suggestions to the Mexican society or any other society to get improvement in the open data or transparency initiatives. We certainly have some strategies from governments in all levels, but as citizen I don't perceive too much benefit or any more improvement in what they are doing. What could be some suggestions to society, not really to the private sector in society in general?
Sure. I can give you a quick comment on that. What we have done in Macedonia is if there is a particular interest of the private sector to have some data open and based on the business model that he can create jobs and revenue innovations, we have created a procedure of how he can apply for that, and we will make sure that data will become open on a machine readable format. So maybe you can, if there is interest in particular data, write to your government, tell them I have a business plan. If you open this data, which is public data, it can help create new jobs, innovations, and so forth. And on another case, I would like to give to Bhanu or Andrew to make a comment.
Just one concern here, right? I think lots of people sometimes confuse between right to information and open data.
Yes.
So I think what you are saying is okay, how you will benefit as an individual or as a citizen of this country. The government opens up everything, and this is for you to take the best use of it. The government cannot dictate that okay, you utilize this data for your benefit in this way. But if there is something that essentially is hurting you, for example, why a school is not functioning, or how much money was spent in for a school, there is another channel that you can utilize, and that is called right to information. And I'm not too sure about what is the situation of here in Mexico, but you can go through a proper channel and request that particular information, and that will essentially ensure that whatever your concern is being properly catered.
Andrew, last comment, please.
Final word, because I've got to dash. There's a lot of talk about big data, but actually one of the things that's important is small data.
Right.
Data that matters to individual citizens in their community. So the national budget for education is a very boring figure. The budget for your children's school, how many teachers are supposed to be employed, how many books are supposed to be bought, how much maintenance is done on that school, that's a much more interesting figure. So actually getting that data out and getting communities using that data is of no value unless it's used. So it's actually communities taking that data and agitating for change and improvement at the local level. And there are lots of examples where that has happened, and it's really driven national improvement in services.
Excellent point. Small data, open government partnership is not about opening the data of the government institutions. We have to get the private companies, medium, large enterprises to open the data as well. Cross-matching those data sets will create an additional value that we cannot even calculate today. So I would like to thank my panelists, Andrew, Bhanu, thanks to Enrique who was from Skype, thanks to the audience who participated today. Hopefully it was information for you that can benefit, and hopefully we can see more and more governments be part of an open data government partnership, and we can see more and more citizens using this open data. Thank you very much.
Okay. Good to meet you.
Now there's a small gift from the organizer. Some.